about this class and tells Angular about a lot of things related to this component. For example, what is the selector of this component? That is app root. This is how when Angular looks at the index.html, it knows that inside the body, this tag which is being used is actually this component, and then it goes ahead and renders welcome to title instead of the app component or inside it, so to say. What I mean is, if I go and inspect it here, you're going to see that in the elements tab, we do have the head, the body, and then inside that we have this app root. Now when Angular looks at this app root, it identifies via this component decorator class that, hey, this app root means this component, which means I should actually render the template which is right here. And thus it goes inside and renders h1 and router, as you can see. If I change anything inside here, it is going to render it inside the app root component, easy peasy. Now one of the things that I would highly encourage you to do is to use the Angular DevTools extension. And this is how the extension looks like. You can just search Angular DevTools, and once you have that and install this, when you go to your elements tab or when you go to your Chrome inspector, which you can do by right clicking and clicking select, you will see an Angular tab right here. And when you click this, you can actually see the components as well. So here you see we have the app root component, and inside that we are also using a router outlet component, but we're gonna talk about that later. In the app root, you see this property called app title, or just the title, which says first ng app. If I change this to essence app, for example, hit enter, you can see that this renders right here. So that's one thing about first ng template. And inside schematics, you can see in the Angular component, I have inline template to inline style. I'm gonna actually remove these so we have separate files going forward. So I'm gonna save this now, and I'm going to run the command again. Now you can see that it generates the HTML file as well, and it also generates the SCSS file. Now I'm gonna run this without the dry run, and there we go. Now we have our component created. If I scroll up, look at here, we have the components folder, and inside we have the HTML and CSS files containing things. And in the TypeScript file, now you're gonna see something different. Here we have the selector called app header, but now instead of the template, unlike here we had template, now here we have template URL, and it points to where is the HTML file for this header component compared to the TypeScript file. And it's right here, so this is pointing to the right file. Similarly, it's pointing for the SCSS file. And now that we have the header component, let's also generate the component for home as well. Since home is going to be a page, I'm not gonna actually create a component in the components folder. I'm going to create this outside. So let's do it like this. I'm gonna just say nggc and home, so I can create it outside of the components folder. And now we have a home component right here as well. Now what I want to do is to be able to render both the header and the component and the home component right here inside my app component. So ideally my app root should show app header and app home. For this method, one, in my app component where I have to render both of them, I have to first import these components. So here I'm gonna go and add home component just like this, and I'm gonna hit enter, and it's automatically going to import this. And then I'm also gonna say header component just like this. Now that I have imported those, I can remove all of these from here, and then I can say something like app, and you can see Angular language server, that is the extension for VS Code, is already helping me. So I can say app header just like this, and I can say app home just like this. Now let's save this, and if I go here, you can see it says header works, home works, and as I said, now the app root has the app header and then the app home. Easy. I'm gonna also go and remove this paragraph from the index.html. We don't really need that. And this looks super nice now. Now what I want to do is to style this a bit better. So first I'm going to go to my style CSS and add some styles. I'm going to say that we have the HTML, we have the body right here, and then we are going to simply say margin 0, padding 0. We are also going to say asterisk, outline none. And now we can quickly go ahead and style the header and the home. So first I'm going to go inside the header component, and here we have a header works. So here we are going to first create a nav, or instead of the nav itself, we are also going to create a header component as well. Now we're gonna put the nav inside this, so let's do that. And inside the nav, we are going to say my first Angular app. So here now you can see my first Angular app. Now we are going to style this a bit. So we are going to quickly go to SCSS, and here we're going to say this header is going to be a display flex. We're going to have padding inline set to 16 pixels. We are also going to have padding block set to 8 pixels. We are also going to have the background color set to 333. and the color is going to be white. We're also going to have items center or align items center and justify content. But here we don't really need to use the small brackets at all. So if I wanted to change that and if I wanted to remove the signal from here, then my HTML template will be really angry with me. I need to change this as well. And if I save this now and go to my application, you can see this still works. You can still see that the header has a property called title. Now this is not a signal as you can see. But if I change this to anything as well, you can see that the changes reflect here. Now the question would be, what should you use? Should you use signals? Or
Radiant's bottom tower is under attack.
I would highly encourage that you start using signals from today. Like, I should not go to someone's house if they have not really allowed me to do so. So ideally, in this particular case, the greeting component should say, hey, I can accept an input that you can pass, and then home component can pass that input. So how we do this here is we say something like message equals input. And this input comes from Angular code, and what this basically does is that it tells Angular that this component can receive something from the outside. And since we always want this, I have this method here, I want to render that inside here. So instead of greeting works, I would say something like h2 greetings, and here I'm going to have a p tag, and here I'm going to actually render the message. Since the message itself is a signal, even though if it's an input signal, I want to use the variable here, which is message, but with the parentheses. So now I can actually do that. Now if I save this, go to my application, and you can see greetings, hello, hello. The hello, hello here basically shows the message right from the component. If I go to the Angular DevTools, go to app greeting, you can see that the message has the value hello, hello right here. Now I don't want this hard-coded value or the default value to show. I want to pass something from the parent. How you can do this is from the home component now, you can go and pass this with square brackets. So here I can say something like square brackets, and you can already see that we see this message, and this comes from greeting component.message, right? So if I click this, I can now say a message in the single quotation, and I can say hello world. So I can hard code something like this, or hello world 1 2 3 4. And now save this, and now you can see that this value becomes hello world 1 2 3 4. If I click app greeting, you can see that this is a read only signal. It says hello world 1 2 3 4. This is coming from the app. If I click app home, you can see that this one is a bit different. So instead of this hard-coded value, how about I send the value that I have in here, which is hello world. So we have the home components message, or we can rename this to something like home message, which is a signal. So instead of passing a hard-coded value, now I can say this is gonna be home message, just like this. If I save this now, you can see that this becomes hello world, and this is actually coming from home. So if I say hello world right here, which is this one, this directly goes to the greeting one and says hello world. What happens if I change this? If I say hello world good day, you can see that it changes in and pass it to your TypeScript function. So you do it something like this. Your function should be able to accept a parameter like this, and then from your template you pass this dollar event. Dollar event is an actual dollar event that is passed to the Angular function that you have in your TypeScript. So I'm going to do that now. So first I'm going to go to my home component TS, and here I'm going to say there's going to be an event here, and this is going to be of type keyboard event. And then I'm also going to say in the template, now I'm going to pass the event. And that's pretty much it. I would also change the message log as well. So I'm going to copy this from my slides just like this, and then I can go to TypeScript, and then I to my home again, and I'm going to import the counter component as well. Notice that we have so far the greetings component, but now I also have counter component. If I go to the template of home, here you can see we are rendering home words. I can remove this now, I think. Now we have app greeting and the input. So right after the app greeting, I'm going to say app counter, and we can render it. If I save this, go to my app, you can see we have greetings here, then we have the counter words, and then we have the input right here. Now the input could also have something that says increment. We're also going to have a button that says decrement, and then we are also going to have a button that says reset. Now these three buttons will have three different functionalities: increment, decrement, and reset. So we're going to go to our component, we're going to create increment, decrement, and reset. So these three functions are here. Now instead of having the hard-coded value 0 here, we are going to, and then we can add one value to it. Instead of doing this, we can actually use the update method, which automatically gets the value just like this. So here you can say something like value, and here you can say val plus 1. So what we are doing right here is that we are saying hey, use the update function, get the latest value, and then add 1 to it and combine them and return. So this will update the value and increment it by 1. We can do the same thing here for the decrement as well. So if I do this, but instead of plus here, we are going to say minus. And in the reset, I just want to say this dot counter value dot set, and here we just need to set it to 0. Now that we have all of this here, we can go to our component. Instead of the hard-coded value, we can say something like this, counter value, and using the parenthesis for it. And then for these ones, we are going to implement the click handlers. So here we can say click, here we can say increment, and I'm gonna do the rest of them as well. And now when you look at the application, you can see the counter value here is 0. If I say increment, the value increases. If I say decrement, the value decreases. And when I say reset, the value sets to 0. I'm just gonna show you quickly by debugging this. So if I press Ctrl P, I say counter.component.ts, and I can go inside increment. So I'm also gonna put the breakpoint right here as well, so you can see the values. So if I hit increment, you can see it comes here and tries to call the update. Then it goes inside and brings the value. Value right here is 0. Now it's gonna increment this to 1. And once it does that, it automatically can return the latest value. And now we have 1 right here. We can go to the Angular sort of command method as well. And if you look at the counter right here, you can see that the counter value here is 1. And if I set to decrement, you can also see the values right here are set simple application.
Radiant
So let's just
are
create that.
scanning.
Now we have the now we are going to do the routing. How to create the router. But I want to show you what happens if I do. So you can go to your after router here, and here is where you define all the routes. By default, you don't have any routes. So we're going to define the first route. We're going to use path here, and we are going to say that if the path is empty, which means we are at the top or root, then we use a component that we are going to tell. But I also want to use path match full, which is required if you're using just empty route. So if the path match full is here and we have the empty route, then I want to load component, and this load component is a function. In this function, you are supposed to return something, and that is an import statement. Here you can say that from this place I want to go to home, and inside the home component file I have something that I want to return, and that is use then. And in here you can say just the title here. So we're gonna do two things here. We're gonna go and have a span here inside which we have the title, and then we should also have sort of a UL and li here, and in the li we can have the router link. So here I will say something like produce, and here I can say something like router link, and here I can say backslash produce. So this is gonna take me to produce, and this guy is gonna actually take me to home. And here I can say router link, and now if I save this, go to my app, you can see here we have produce, here we have my first Angular app. If I click this, I go to home, I can produce, I go to produce. And you will notice that the page does not refresh. This is what we actually want. In a single page application without reloading the whole browser, just the content inside the app will changes. So if I open this main, you will see that if I go to produce, just this thing changes. This, you can see app home. If I click this, you can see this is the fusion of browser. And I want to make this a bit nicer. So what I'm going to do is add some style. Here I can go and say inside the header, we had the nav, we're gonna make this flex or display flex, and then we are going to say justify content space between, and inside here we are also going to say items center. Finally, we'll also address the UL and li. So here we are going to say list style high or list style none. Actually, if I save this now, go to my app, you can see this becomes much nicer. But I also wanted this to take the full width. If I go to nav, I think the nav is not taking the full width. So the header has the full width, but if I look at the nav, yeah, it's pretty small. Even the header doesn't take the full width. So let's correct that. So I'm gonna go to header here, and I'm gonna say the width is gonna be 100%, and the nav is also gonna have the width.
Dire's middle tower
Save this.
is under attack.
That doesn't really look good, so we need to remove this from the header. I'm gonna remove this. Now this looks nice.
Radiant
One more
are
thing that we may
scanning.
want to do is when we have the list items
Dire's
being
turret
hovered, for
has been
example, li, we can change their color. So here we can say and hover, and we can change the color to something like EEE. Save this, and now when I go here, they change a bit, but it's not really apparent. Maybe change this to something light. So maybe 777. And I also, when I run the same thing, it creates a folder of the component itself. When we run this for services, the services does not create folder for to-dos. It directly creates a service file inside that, which is fine. So if I open the services, you can see that we have the to-do service right here. And if I open it, you will see that it is quite similar to the component that we have. The only difference is that unlike the component decorator that we have here, for services we have something called injectable, which means that the services can be injected in other places. Now, one of the things I want you to remember is that a service can either be provided directly in a single component. For example, you could say that this is just going to be here in this header component. I'm going to go here to providers, and I can say something like service. Now, this means that this service can only be used inside the component and nowhere else. If you want that, then you need to remove this whole thing provided in root from here completely. If you don't want that, then you can put this back, and this means that now, just by putting this provider I literally have and this will be available everywhere regardless. I'm also gonna just remove from here as well. Now that we have the service, let's talk about how we can use it. The first thing I want to do is to have some to-dos that I can render on the UI or just console log maybe. So I want to have the component having the data from the service. Now when we go to our to-dos page, you see it says to-do work. What if I had an array of to-dos and I could use that within the component .ts. Now for the to-dos, I'm going to create a type. So here I'm going to go and say something like a model, and inside that I could say something like to-do.type.ts, for example. And here I can create a type. So I can say export type to-do item, for example, or just to-do. And here I'm going to tell what is going to be the type or what data it will contain. So we'll have a user ID, which will be of number. We'll also have completed, which is going to be a boolean. We're going to have title, which is going to be a string. And then finally, we'll also have an ID, which is going to be a number. And we're going to use an API later on for this. But let's assume I wanted some to-do. I can actually create that right here in the to-do service. So here I could say to-do item equals, and I can create an array. But I will define what kind of array it is. And here I can say to-do item, just to-do. So this to-do is coming from the model file, and now here I can say my first to-do is having the title, and you can see IntelliSense automatically helps me because of this typing. So here we can say, for example, title is going to be groceries, then I should have ID 0, user ID, let's say 1, and then completed is going to be false. So unless I give all of the type is gonna not like me at all. So let's paste this. Now the other one can be something like car wash, for example. The ID of this is supposed to be 1, and the user ID remains the same, completed is false. Now that I have to-do item, how do I use the service into any of the components? Since this is an injectable, I can inject this in other places. So I'm gonna go to my to-do component, which is right here, and inside this, I'm gonna go to component file, and in here, I have to, in my script class, inject the service. So here I could say to-do service equals, and now I can use the inject function. So I can say inject, and here I need to say service. So simply it says, in my component, inject the to-do service, which assigns this to this variable. Now I can use in my entire code this to-do service anywhere at all. So in here,